I'm Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime magazine. I'm here today with Richard Seewald, founder and managing partner at Evolution Equity Partners, an international venture capital investor partnering with exceptional entrepreneurs to develop market-leading cybersecurity and enterprise software companies. To learn more about our sponsor, visit evolutionequity.com. Also joining us is Jamil Farshchi, EVP and Chief Information Security Officer at Equifax. Welcome, Richard and Jamil. It's great to have you both with us.
Thank you for having me.
Great to be here. Pleasure to speak with you again.
So both of you were at the RSA conference in 2023, San Francisco recently. Tens of thousands of people were there, which was great to see, after the pandemic. We were there. We were giving out copies of the Hacker's Movie Guide. The foreword was written by Steve Wozniak. We had a line of people waiting. We were interviewing, asking people, what's your favorite hacker movie, your favorite cybersecurity movie? Richard, you're in the book. Jamil, we almost caught up with you. I know you had a very busy schedule, so I want to kick off and ask you, what is your favorite hacker or cybersecurity movie?
I think probably the one I would pick would be, if this fits within the genre, I think it fits within this box, it'd have to be Matrix. I absolutely love that movie. The first one. They've sort of trailed off since then, but Matrix is fantastic.
So Richard, your favorite is 1984. It's in the book. Tell us about that.
Matrix is great. I would reconsider it. But I think 1984, the classic work by Orwell on the overreach of government, relevant in the current environment, lots of lessons to learn from it if you give it a reread and watch the movie. So, that was my pick, but I like Matrix too. The red pill and the blue pill.
So, Jamil, you have a fantastic background. We've been in touch with each other for a while. You've been a CISO and security leader for many years. We interviewed the world's first CISO, who was appointed to that position in 1994. And I want you to take us back, maybe, the challenges over the past 20 years. When you look back, how different is it compared to today?
You know what's interesting? So earlier this year, I was a co-chair for this committee that we put together with the Bipartisan Policy Center. And we got a bunch of top CISOs and government officials and elected officials. And our goal was to try to put together a list of the top cyber risks for 2023. And we got to the conclusion of this thing, and we had this big report and all these findings and stuff like that. And I remember one of the CISOs, I won't call him out, he was like, should we sort of, beef this up a little bit or something? Because these are all kind of boring things. The reason he said that is because these were the top risks were all of the same things that we've all, any CISO who's been in this game for any time at all, have been dealing with since the dawn of time. And so I guess to answer your question, the biggest challenges that we're seeing today are the same ones that honestly I dealt with very early in my career. I mean, you've got the vulnerability issues. You've got the challenges of getting commitment from the executive teams so you can have the budgets that you need. We've got our struggles with identifying and bringing on and retaining talent. So I think all of those things are very similar. The one major difference today is that the stakes are just so much higher. They're just fantastically higher because of digitization, because of our reliance as a society on technology. Every facet of our lives is dominated by it. And so when you look at cyber, all of those same things that we've always dealt with still exist. It's just that when those things go wrong, things get really, really bad, really fast. Whereas in the past, it wasn't as big of a deal.
So, Jamil, there's so much we can touch on there. Let me just turn to the talent crunch, because that is something that's persisting. Richard, I want to ask you about that, and I'll come back to you, Jamil. A big challenge we routinely hear from large enterprise CISOs who come on with us is recruiting and retaining cybersecurity talent. According to our research, the world has around 3.5 million unfilled positions, but the number doesn't really matter. We can all agree that it's a lot. And we're talking about the more experienced positions being especially difficult to fill. Richard, is our market delivering on technologies to help organizations cope with a lack of cyber fighters?
Probably not good enough. I think we're starting to see the beginning of automation actually have an impact, in the SOC with tier 1 and tier 2 levels, having some level of automation that has helped resolve that imbalance of supply and demand of people. But I think we can do a lot better. It's not only from a technical standpoint, but then it's also the adoption of that technology and integrating it and shifting the culture around how automation and ultimately how machine learning and AI impact that will be a big task for chief security officers over the next 5 years.
So, Jamil, last year, 2022, for the first time we've been tracking this, we saw the number of positions level off. And we're seeing the same thing now. We're expecting that through 2025. So, the good news is the number of unfilled positions isn't growing, but we still have a lot to fill. We are also tracking women in cybersecurity, college graduates who are coming out, who have more experience with cyber, more courseware. What are you seeing? Women, young people, minorities, just in general, are we starting to turn the corner? Are we starting to bring a more diverse candidate pool into this industry?
I think from a diversity standpoint, there's no question that we are. It's a long road, and so we still have quite a ways to go in that front, but it is materially shifted, in my opinion, at least anecdotally, over the course of the past several years in a positive direction. I would question, though, the data that you called out at the top here around the leveling off. Because I think it's a double-edged sword. I've got to believe, and I don't know, you just cited that, but I've got to believe that the leveling off has a lot to do with the economic factors as well. One would assume that as soon as the economy starts to pick up again and companies start to invest more again, i.e., when they're not as concerned about a potentially impending recession, that previous paradigm of the challenge with talent will resurface, and probably pretty quickly. I think that's one of the biggest areas, and Richard hit the nail on the head there, that technology can actually help us. And I think there's been a lot of fits and starts throughout the years where this tech or that tech or whatever, some form of new efficiency is going to save the day and it's going to relieve us of this challenge that we have around talent. I think AI actually does have meaningful promise to help solve for us in that space, and in a great way, because I think that what it can do is give us the opportunity to solve for many of the more day-to-day sort of mundane kind of activities that our teams are faced with, and instead get them to level up and focus on more knowledge-based, more challenging problem-solving types of activities that are both more rewarding from a day-to-day standpoint, from a professional standpoint, as well as from a career growth one. So I am super encouraged by the potential of that technology. And I think if you combine that with all of the other activities around talent development, the university programs that are being developed, and the greater level of interest in cyber, more generally speaking, I think that we've got a fighting chance now in the next decade or so to be able to put ourselves in a far better position around talent than we have historically.
Richard, I asked about movies in the beginning of this interview because pop culture is a great way to attract people to our field. It's a highly technical field. The cliche of a hacker in a hoodie turns a lot of people off. Women make up about 50% of the US workforce. The figure's a little bit lower globally, but still, represented, in much higher numbers than they are in the cybersecurity field, where they hold about 25% of positions. When it comes to Fortune 500 CISOs, that number's lower. It's about 17%. So we hope to see that go up. You've talked about women in cyber, Richard, with us previously. How important is it to get more of them involved?
It's essentially that we get a diversity of talent to bridge that gap. And it's women, but it's also other candidates that might not have the opportunity otherwise to gain access to the cybersecurity industry, but now because of the various programs and opportunities that are out there can help bridge that gap. And it's about defending and protecting what matters most. And when we do that together, I think an inclusive workforce in the cybersecurity space is part of that story. And we're on the pathway there. Still not there, but on that pathway. And as we look over the next 5 years, I think the trend is towards that. So, positive and optimistic about that.
Jamil, we just to, maybe put a little more context on this. When we first started tracking women in the cybersecurity field, and of course these numbers are imperfect. I don't want to get stuck on, exact stats, but it was about 10%. And that was a decade ago, 2013. And now we're looking at 25%. So despite the fact that the number isn't where we'd like it to be at 50%, we're steadily seeing it go up. When you were at the RSA conference, when you're, out meeting with colleagues, other CISOs, are you feeling like, that number is going to continue to rise? And do you think we'll start to see more women in CISO positions at large enterprises?
Yeah, I do, on both fronts. And here's why, because it has a flywheel effect. When you get to 24, 25% of the industry being women, other women then are naturally going to gravitate more to this space because they have more role models for which to be able to look up to and say, you know what, this isn't just a complete male dominated area. This isn't just for guys. I can actually fit in here. When I look at my team, several of my absolute top tier performers are women. There's no reason why women can't be in this space. They do a fantastic job. But the problem has been when you have just this weak smattering of women within the space, it's tough to attract other ones in because just human nature. And so I think that we're on a really good trajectory, and I think that we will see meaningful increases in that 25% as we tick up closer and closer to the 50. And we'll make far more progress this coming decade than we did the previous one on an absolute basis.
So, Richard, a lot of CISOs follow us, and I guess to Jamil's point in the flywheel, the more CISOs who we have on with us, the more join our network. Jamil is sure to attract a lot more. He has a great name in the industry. One thing that surprised me about these large enterprise CISOs, and it's why I originally reached out to you a couple of years ago, is that they're interested in M&A activity. They're interested in venture funding activity and, just sort of keeping a pulse on the market. So maybe you can give us a 30,000-foot view, Richard, of the cybersecurity market before we go.
Well, that's a tall task because we'd be here for quite some time. But I'm going to give you the elevator, talk on this industry. Look, 20 years ago, this category was roughly $3 billion of spend. In and around 2000, we moved to the next decade, it's $50 billion of spend. You move through that next decade, we're getting close to 100 and on to 250 billion of spend. A number of studies that you've put out kind of pegs this category at a value of 2 trillion in aggregate over the next 6-7 years. And in addition, a 10x upside on the current vended base for cybersecurity software. When you pull those numbers together, there's tremendous opportunity to invest in entrepreneurs that are building technology that address next generation cybersecurity threats. Look, this environment, and not dissimilar from other downturns we've seen in the market, post 9/11, post 2008, in those environments, some of the leading cybersecurity companies that we speak about today in the public markets were born. We're about to see a bunch of cybersecurity companies be born in this environment that are going to be able to address, some of those problems that are on the horizon and in the near term. And I can tell you for sure, the technologies that we discussed today, automation, machine learning, and AI, are going to be part of that solution. But we're really excited about this category and pleased to be working with great CISOs like Jamil and others in the market.
Jamil, you have so much experience, your colleagues do at large enterprises, or you wouldn't be in that position. You have teams of people who work underneath you. But what really concerns me are the smaller and mid-sized companies where they don't have a CISO. They often do not have full-time cybersecurity staff, and a lot of times their IT staff just doesn't have cybersecurity experience. That's not a knock on them. It's just they're resource strapped. They're small companies. What advice can you offer? And we ask this of a lot of CISOs who come on with us, Jamil, as a way of giving back. Advice to the small companies out there who don't have the resources. What should they be paying attention to? What can they do to help themselves?
I've been at the small startup company before, and so I know what it's like to, have a team of 2 or 3 people and not have the budgets that nowhere near what I have today. The advice is this: you're not going to be a Bank of America or an Equifax from your investment profile and have the latest and greatest stuff. But the good news is you don't need to. You don't need to. There's a handful of basic things that you can do, and if you grind on them day in and day out, you're going to put your company and yourself in a pretty good position to succeed. I mean, look, focus on things like patching, on your configurations, on your credentials. Just those 3 things alone, you're going to be in a pretty good place. And you don't need massive amounts of investment to be able to solve for those things. And I think that as long as people are able to focus on those things and prioritize them and not look outside the box at all the shiny new toys and other stuff that everyone else is doing, and they just get back down to the basics, they're going to be in a pretty good position in the long run.
So having the 2 of you on with us, one of the top investors in our industry, Richard, and one of the top CISOs, Jamil, to close out, would either of you like to ask the other a question?
What is the next big thing, Richard? I want to know from an investment standpoint, where should I be putting my money?
We were all at RSA, and the onset of the GPT layer and how that's impacted products is something to watch. But I think, looking forward over the next couple of years, how we protect machine learning and AI algorithms and models and data, and it's going to be impactful on organizations. I think that's an area that, we think is pretty exciting over the next couple of years. And, let's see. Jamil, if you want to invest with us, we're pleased to work with you on that and get you into some hot cybersecurity companies that you're probably working with already.
Count me in. Can I ask one more question though? I know you didn't give me the chance. I want to ask two questions. With the hype and the fear and everything around GAI, LLM, blah blah blah. Do you think net that these things are going to be a net win for cyber defenders? Or do you think that the risks are so pervasive and potentially damning that net they're going to be losers for us because the threats and all the things, the bad things they can do are going to cause us a lot more pain than the upside they potentially provide?
Yeah, great question. I think when we look at any of the cybersecurity trends over the last 25 years, you can ask the same question. It's probably more pronounced today when it comes to risk. But I'm a technology optimist in a sense that I think our industry will use that technology to better defend and protect. It'll improve detection and response. It'll help us solve problems that, right now we probably don't even envisage being able to solve. So I'm an optimist in that respect. And certainly there are challenges and we will face them over the next decade, but not unlike the challenges that we faced, from 2000 to 2010 with the expansion of the internet and the increased attack surface. We're going to be able to do that. We've got smart people in this industry like you, and, we're going to continue to work hard and make that happen.
I totally agree with you. I am an optimist as well, and I do feel like net the benefits that these capabilities and technologies can provide us as defenders, I think they far outweigh the potential downsides. So I'm with you on that one. We'll see. I guess time will tell whether we're right or not, but I'm a firm believer.
So I have a question for you, Jamil. When it comes to automating some of the processes that you work with every day and the technology that you've seen in the market, and this is kind of, flipping back to the question you asked me, are we doing a good enough job? Are we doing a good enough job in funding companies that provide you the type of capability that you would like to solve those problems? Or are we still kind of, a step behind in terms of the demands that you have on a day-to-day basis? I think as an industry, that's a question that we always talk to CISOs about, and it sometimes you're kind of right in that sweet spot. Sometimes we're a little bit behind. Sometimes we're too early. But in terms of automating and being able to resolve that imbalance of supply and demand of people, how do we do as an industry today?
I think it leaves a lot to be desired, honestly. I think we do a fantastic job of investing in solutions for the next big threat. Whatever the topic du jour was, supply chain, or now it's AI, whatever it is, we do a great job of, API. There's another one. Like we do a great job investing in those. What we oftentimes fail to do is invest in companies that are trying to solve exactly what you're talking about, the efficiency challenges that we face, whether it's just purely from a talent perspective or it's issues around efficiency whereby security necessarily has to work with the technology teams and intersect with all of those other groups where we don't have full control to be able to help drive better communications and efficiency and effectiveness through those internal processes. And I assume it's because those things aren't quite as sexy and people aren't screaming from the treetops about, oh my gosh, this risk that's here. But I think that there's a huge opportunity there because when I talk to my peers, and then just from my own personal experience and the seat that I'm in, it would be monumental to have some solutions around more efficiency and more automation to just make the day-to-day stuff easier and more effective to do. And I would invest far more money on products and services in that domain than I would around the next, sexy 0.001% threat that's out there that everyone else is clamoring for.
Hey, I agree, Jamil. And, maybe there'll be some exciting things coming down the pipe. So we'll look out for that.
I would love to hear more about anything in that particular space. There's not nearly enough there, in my opinion.
Hey, Steve, thanks for setting up this conversation. You always do a great job.
Thank you, Jamil. Thank you so much. I hope you'll come back on with us again.
This has been fantastic. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
I'm Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime magazine. This interview is sponsored by Evolution Equity, an international venture capital investor partnering with exceptional entrepreneurs to develop market-leading cybersecurity and enterprise software companies. Visit evolutionequity.com to learn more. You can keep up with all of our media at cybercrimemagazine.com.